Welcome. This is Accounting with Bennett Tchaikovsky. Our topic today is non-current liabilities or bonds and the time value of money. We're also going to be looking at issuing bonds when the market or the stated rate are exactly the same. This presentation is copyright 2008 to 2018 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. So the one question we get into is that with bonds, and what's really important to understand about bonds and really about money is that a dollar today is not the same as a dollar tomorrow. And what I'm getting at here is that when we're looking at bonds or we're looking at any type of any non-current or long-term liability with payments in the future, what we will have to do is to bring back those future amounts into today's dollars. But before we get there, let's kind of go through a fun example. If I invested $200,000 today, or I should say on January 1st, 2018, at a 6% annual interest rate, and the interest was then reinvested along with the principal after each year, how much would this investment be worth in 20 years? And so what I've done here is I've created a little chart, and I always enjoy asking this question to my class because it's kind of fun. It's like, how much is it worth? Well, $215, well, not really. But my first year here, I've got my beginning balance times my interest rate. And up here, when you see this little notation or A times B equals C, this is really to kind of help you follow along. And so then to my ending balance, well, if I invest $200,000 at a 6% rate of interest, the amount of interest I would have earned is $12,000. And so my ending balance after 2018 is going to be $212,000. Well, what happens? Well, if I reinvest that $212,000 at 6%, then the interest I've earned is $12,720. So when I look at this here, and I say, well, my ending balance then would be my beginning balance plus my interest earned, then we get into the fun. The next year for 2020, my beginning balance here is going to be $224,720 times 6%. My interest is $13,483. Ending balance is $238,203. So what we'll see is at the end of 20 years, this $200,000 has become how much? Well, it's become right now $641,427, and that is the beauty of compounding interest. When I'm reinvesting at a certain rate of a certain interest rate, this will continue to go through and compound over time. So again, if I take us $200,000 and I am investing this every single year and I'm getting 6% interest and I'm getting interest on interest, which basically means interest is compounding, my ending balance will be $641,427. And what we really are trying to figure out here is when going back to non-current liabilities and bonds is when we have an amount on a bond that's going to be paid to us 20 years from now, we need to present value that amount back into today's dollars. So let's see, if I'm to be paid $641,427 on December 31st, 2017, what would this amount be worth in today's dollars? So right here, if I'm now kind of looking at this in reverse, well, if I have this amount here of $641,427, how can I figure out what an amount in the future is worth today? Well, fortunately for us, we have something called a present value table. And I've linked one here that you can go ahead and take a look at. There's a lot of great ones that are out there. But when I'm using the present value table, and let's go through and take a look here. Perfect. Okay. When I go to this present value table, and what I'm trying to do right now is I am trying to take an amount or $641,427. If this amount's going to be paid to me 20 years from now, and if we assume an interest rate of 6%, what is this going to be worth to me today? So when we do this, we need to know two things. One is the interest rate. Well, right here, we know that our interest rate is going to be 6%. At the same time, I need to figure out how many times is interest being compounded. Well, in my example right here, if it is 20 years from now, what I would do is I would go here, and if the interest is being compounded annually or once per year for 20 years, the number of times interest would theoretically be getting compounded would be 20. One time per year times 20 years. So here I've got 20 periods at 6%. And the value we get right here is 0.31180. So if I take 0.31180, what's going to happen is I'm going to take 641,427, multiply it by 0.31180, and I'm going to come up with 199,997. And what exactly does this mean? Well, what this is that this whole computation that I've done right here of taking that $200,000 and doing interest on interest to get this, I can take a future dollar amount, and using this present value table, I can bring a future dollar amount back into today's dollars. And that's what's really important about when we're looking at non-current or long-term liabilities. If I have to pay $10 million today or $10 million 30 years from now, what would I rather pay? Well, I of course would rather pay it 30 years from now. And why is that? It's because if I get $10 million today, and if I'm earning interest on that amount every single year and able to reinvest it, that's going to be worth well above $10 million, 20, 30 years from now. So when I have a non-current or a long-term liability, what I need to do is I need to take that future amount that I'm being paid and present value that back into today's dollars. And so what we do here is we're going to use this table for a lump sum, meaning for one payment. We're going to take that present value factor, or 20 periods at 6%. We're going to multiply that amount by the amount to be paid, and this is here what we're going to get, which is very, very similar here to this $200,000. So the important part of this section right here is really saying to ourselves is that a dollar today is not the same as a dollar tomorrow. Therefore, if I'm being paid out amounts in the future, I need to use the present value table to bring those back to today's dollars. Now let's take a look at our example. So we have PM Inc. issues a 4-year, $5 million bond with a stated interest rate of 8% on January 1st, 2010. The bond will pay interest every December 31st, and the market rate of interest is 8%. So when we get a bond question, and again, this is like an interest-only loan, we have to remember that the bond valuation has two components. There is an interest component, meaning it's going to be paying interest every year, or 8%, because it has a stated rate of 8% times 5 million, or 400,000 per year. But also it's going to pay me $5 million at the end of 4 years. So right here, let's go through here and take a look at, and I think I kind of screwed this up. This should be right here, 2020. Wow, I write my own problems and I create problems. Okay, so if we look at the payments, the amount of the interest is going to be 5 million times 8% or 400,000. That's where I'm getting that number from. And if we look at the interest, right, we kind of said about bonds is that this is kind of like what I've created right here is like a payment schedule. So every year the bond is going to be paying interest, 400,000 per year for 4 years. And then it's going to be a principal amount of $5 million. Now, these are future payments, right? Is that the same as a future dollar today, the same as a dollar today, the same as a dollar tomorrow? Clearly not. It is not, because we have a market rate assumption here of 8%, right? The bonds are paying out a stated rate of 8%, but it has a market rate of 8%. So clearly, a dollar today is not the same as a dollar tomorrow. So what would be the cash proceeds that I would be receiving as a result of selling these bonds? Now, what I cannot do is I cannot go, oh, I'm going to be getting cash of 6.6 million, right? It's one number away from being satanic, and it's not the correct answer, right? So that's not the right answer. And again, not a dollar today is not a dollar tomorrow. So what we need to do is use our present value table. So for the principal amount, and kind of what we were just learning, is that what I need to figure out is, okay, interest is being paid out annually. How many times is interest being paid? Well, it's a 4-year bond, and it's an annual interest payment. And so therefore, what I need to do is to say, okay, there's going to be 4 periods. Then what I need to figure out is, what is the market rate of interest? And right here, we're saying that the market rate of interest is 8%. So I'm going to go to my present value table. And for this $5 million that is going to be paid out, or that principal amount that's going to be paid out in 4 years, I'm going to go to 4 periods at 8%, and I'm going to be getting 0.73503. So when I go back here and I look at this first part here, so the principal amount that's going to be paid 5 years from now is going to be right here. Today it is worth $3,675,150. That's what the value of $5 million paid 4 years from now at an 8% interest is going to be worth. And if I really wanted to kind of test this thing out, and I want to say, okay, and say here my principal amount is $3,675,150. My interest rate, again, this is going to be the market interest rate, is going to be 8%. So my interest is going to be $294.12, and my principal plus interest, this here is going to be a total of $3,969,162. I reinvest that amount, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy these down. Excuse me while I improvise on the fly. Sorry guys, I don't have the power of editing. Nope. Well, let me do it. Okay. Let's go here. And there we go. There we go. Boom. Wow, it worked. Well, of course it's going to work. So what this really means is that when I'm investing $3 million, this $5 million that's basically going to be paid out to my bondholder in 4 years, because of the 8% market rate of interest, that amount is worth $3,675,150 today. So from an accounting standpoint, this is going to be part of that value that I'm going to be recording on my books. So what does this mean? If we're taking this $3,675,150, this will be worth $5 million at the end of the 4 years. Now, For the interest payments, what I have to do here is that, well, this is not being paid at the end of year 4. The interest is being paid annually. So what I'm going to do, if I was using the present value of a dollar table, is I would take each payment, and because this $400,000 is being paid 1 year from now at 8%, that present value factor is going to be 0.92593. And so you can see where I'm getting these from. One period at 8%, 0.92593, and we keep going down here, and that's where I'm getting those numbers from. And so the total present value, meaning if I add up the present value of each of these amounts, and what I'm doing here is for each payment, I'm going to multiply it by that present value factor here, 1 period at 8%, 2 periods at 8%, 3 periods at 8%, and 4 periods at 8%. So when I add these 4 numbers up, those 4 future payments of $400,000 each for 4 years is not worth $1.6 million. Rather, it is worth $1,324,852. So when I'm trying to determine the total value of the bond, right, and just as a side note here, if I had to go through, and if I didn't have, say, a 4-year bond, but I had a 20-year bond, and I didn't have an Excel spreadsheet to be using or any kind of cool calculator, what would I do? Well, there's another table that I'm going to introduce to you right now where if we have the same annual payment or the same payment every single period and that same interest rate, what we can do is we can go to what is called the present value of an ordinary annuity of $1. And what this is going, how this is going to work is we're going to take our payment amount, or here, this $400,000, and I'm then going to go through here and say, okay, present value of an ordinary annuity. I'm going to look up here. Interest is being paid 4 times. And I'm going to go over here to 8%, and I get a number of 3.31213. So when I come back to this, I've got 400,000 times 3.31213. I get the present value, the interest payments being $1,324,852, which not by coincidence is the same number if I had to present value each of these amounts. So when I'm looking at this, what do I want to do? Well, if I have interest payments, do I want to go through and do each one individually? No. I want to use the table, and I can use that table as long as those interest payment amounts are exactly the same. So the way I'm going to use the table is I'm going to figure out how many payments of interest are being made, the appropriate rate of interest. This was 4 periods at 8%. So the present value of these interest payments are going to be $1,324,852. So now what we have to go through and what we were doing, let's kind of go back and take a look at what we were doing. So we were going to issue a bond, and we're issuing this, wow, that was a long time ago. We were issuing a $5 million bond with a stated rate of interest of 8% on January 1st, 2020. The bond will pay interest each year on December 31st. Market rate of interest is 8%. So when we're determining the bond proceeds, and what we're really talking about is what is that cash going to be. So the cash we're going to be receiving is going to be the present value of the principal, or $3,675,150, plus the present value of the interest payments, or $1,324,852. And when we go back over here and look at this, what are the total cash proceeds? So the total cash we're going to be receiving is, well, $5 million. And wow, that was great, Tchaikovsky, meaning I issued a $5 million bond and I'm getting $5 million cash. You're insane. Why did you just do that? It's because when we are doing an issuance where the stated rate of interest and the market rate of interest are exactly the same, the bond will issue at face value. So what we're going to be doing as a company when we issue this bond, and right over here, I'm getting cash of $5 million. The bond payable will be shown here at $5 million. Now remember, a bond payable is a liability. We are the company, we are essentially borrowing money in the form of a bond that we have to repay back to the investor. First is going to be the interest payment, and then upon maturity, we have to pay back that whole balance. So the reason why I went through and I did this is I want you to understand for this first part, really how we're going through and valuing a bond. And it's very important to understand that, you know, when you're looking at a bond, it has two different components, and those components each have a very important value. And as we look at this here for the principal, right, is that this thing here, wow, like 5 million is only worth 3.6. And the answer is yes. And if we took this out even further, if I went at like 30 years out, that amount is even going to get smaller. Then what becomes more valuable with the bond? It's going to be the interest payments, because those are coming every single year. So when we're looking at when a bond is being, when the stated rate and the market rate of interest are the same, the bond will be issued at par, or what we'll say is the bond will be issued at its face value. And for our solution right here, we have basically this journal entry when a bond's being issued is I'm debiting cash, my cash is going up, I'm crediting bonds payable. So again, this here is to give you kind of an overview in terms of how this works. We're going to be looking at a discount a little bit more further. I hope you found this video helpful. And like every single other new YouTuber, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. And thank you for your time today. Thank you.